Snow exploded around him as the shell hit, shaking the ground beneath his boots. Lauri Törni pressed his face into the frozen dirt, heart hammering against the cold. When the thunder faded, he rose from the smoke, rifle in hand, moving forward through the storm. The winter war had turned Finland's forests into graveyards of ice. Soviet tanks crawled across the white horizon, their engines groaning against the cold. Against them stood farmers, hunters, and boys with bolt-action rifles, outnumbered, outgunned, unbroken. Lauri was barely 20, yet already carried the calm of someone who had buried fear long ago. His eyes, sharp and blue as the ice, scanned the tree line. He knew this land like his own pulse. Every shadow, every sound, every gust of wind was his ally. The Soviets came in waves, red banners slapping against the wind. Lauri and his men waited in silence, the snow muffling their breath. Then, as the first tank broke through the forest edge, the ambush began. Fire bloomed across the white world like sunrise. Flames licked the sky, the air filled with the crack of rifles and the hiss of grenades. The Soviet column disintegrated in confusion, engines burning, men stumbling into snow that turned red beneath them. When it ended, silence returned, cold, pure, absolute. For weeks, Lauri led ambush after ambush, striking like a ghost and vanishing into the woods. His men called him fearless. The Soviets called him invisible. The snow called him its own. War had turned him from a soldier into something elemental. They called it mighty warfare: divide, encircle, destroy. To the Soviets it was terror. To the Finns it was survival. The land itself fought beside them, swallowing tanks, breaking engines, freezing flesh. Every step forward for the enemy cost them blood. When spring came, Finland had lost territory but not its will. The Soviets claimed victory, but the price was unbearable. Their dead lay in frozen fields, faces pale beneath ice. For Lauri, the war had ended, yet peace felt like a wound that wouldn't close. He returned home to silence. The factory stood half-ruined, the air heavy with smoke and memory. People smiled at him as a hero, but their eyes looked hollow. He had fought for freedom, yet all he could feel was the echo of gunfire inside his head. Then, in 1941, the world caught fire again. Germany invaded the Soviet Union, and Finland saw its chance to reclaim what had been lost. Old enemies became allies overnight. For Lauri, the decision wasn't political. It was personal. Revenge had a name. He joined the army once more, now fighting beside German troops against the Red Army he already knew so well. This was not patriotism. It was closure. The forests burned again, and Lauri moved through them like a man finishing what destiny began. His skill drew attention. The Germans sent him to Austria for advanced training with the Waffen-SS, teaching sabotage, explosives, and mountain warfare. There, among men hardened by ideology, he learned not belief, but mastery, efficiency without emotion. When he returned to Finland, he commanded his own special unit, Detachment Törni. They operated deep behind Soviet lines, cutting supply routes, destroying bridges, and vanishing before dawn. Each mission was a ghost story. The enemy would never forget. Lauri's reputation spread like wildfire. To his enemies, he was a phantom. To his men, a legend. To himself, nothing more than a survivor. He had become everything war demanded: precise, relentless, merciless. And he wore that armor as naturally as breath. By 1944, even the hardest soldiers could feel the tide turning. The Red Army pushed back with overwhelming force. Finland signed peace with Moscow again, surrendering to the inevitable, and suddenly the allies of yesterday were the enemies of today. The Germans, retreating through the north, became targets. Lauri was ordered to drive them out. Men he had trained beside, fought with, trusted. He obeyed, but the cost hollowed him further. War had stopped making sense, and yet he could not stop fighting. The Lapland War tore what little peace remained to shreds. Bridges burned, villages vanished, friendships ended under gunfire. When it was finally over, Lauri walked through ash and snow and realized he no longer belonged anywhere. His country had survived, but he had not. To the new government, he was no hero. His German ties made him dangerous. They arrested him for treason, stripped him of rank and freedom. Behind cold walls, he thought only of movement, of the forests, the snow, the sound of gunfire that once meant purpose. But Lauri Törni was not a man meant for cages. One night, he escaped. Slipping into the dark, he vanished into the same wilderness that had once hidden him from the Soviets. No dogs followed. No searchlights found him. By dawn, the forest had claimed him again. He fled west across the ice through Sweden, carrying nothing but forged papers and the ghosts of his own making. The world was changing fast, but war had taught him one rule that never failed: keep moving or die standing still. For months, he drifted across borders, a man without a name. The war was ending, but for Lauri, peace was just another kind of exile. In Sweden, he worked quietly in the forests, his hands steady, his mind restless, waiting for something that no longer existed. He boarded a cargo ship bound for Venezuela, seeking distance rather than freedom. The sea was endless, gray and cold, yet he found comfort in its motion. The waves reminded him of the rhythm of patrols, constant, unbroken, alive in their repetition. Fate had one more turn to offer. A storm wrecked his vessel off the American coast. He reached land soaked, shivering, but alive. He had no passport, no past, only instinct. When he saw soldiers training nearby, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. He enlisted in the U.S. Army under a new name, Larry Thorne. His accent was thick, his record spotless. No one asked about the scars on his hands or the way he scanned the horizon like a man expecting gunfire. The Army didn't question skill. It rewarded it. Larry began again from the bottom, but he rose fast. His experience was undeniable. He could navigate any terrain, improvise under pressure, survive anything. To his new commanders, he was the kind of soldier war itself seemed to have sculpted. He joined the Special Forces, the Green Berets, where his calm precision and brutal efficiency became legend. The younger men followed him instinctively. They didn't know his past, but they felt the weight of it. Larry didn't speak of his history. He lived it. He trained them to move like ghosts, to trust silence more than orders. He taught that fear was a tool, not a weakness, that the land always tells you more than the enemy does. Every lesson carried the cold breath of Finland, the survival instinct of a hunted man. To his recruits, he was unbreakable. To himself, He was finally useful again. War had given him a place, a rhythm, a meaning, a home made of danger. But deep down, he knew that men like him didn't retire. They simply ran out of missions. When Vietnam began to burn, Larry didn't wait for orders. He volunteered before anyone could ask. His superiors hesitated. He was older now, built for the Arctic, not the jungle. But he only said, "I belong in the field," and they believed him. The heat hit like a wall when he arrived. The jungle hummed with life and death. Leeches clung to the skin, the air thick with insects and humidity. But to Larry, it was just another battlefield. Another wilderness whispering threats he already understood. He led reconnaissance missions deep behind enemy lines. His men swore he could feel ambushes before they happened, as if the earth itself warned him. They followed him through rivers, through darkness, through fear. And somehow, he always brought them back. Each mission made his legend grow. He became the soldier other soldiers whispered about, the man who could read terrain like scripture, who never hesitated, who had walked through every kind of hell and refused to stop. The jungle respected him. But war has a way of collecting its debts. On October 18, 1965, Captain Larry Thorne boarded a helicopter bound for Laos. The mission was routine, rescue and recovery. But in war, routine meant nothing. The sky was low, the fog alive, the silence deceptive. Minutes after takeoff, the radio cut out. Then, nothing. No distress call, no coordinates, only static and silence. Search teams swept the area for days, then weeks. No wreckage, no bodies. Larry Thorne had vanished again, swallowed by a different kind of snow. For decades, his name stayed on the missing in action list. Some said he'd survived, that he'd gone native in the jungle. Others believed the earth had finally taken him. Either way, no one ever stopped searching. Men like him don't just disappear. In 1999, a recovery team combing the Laosian hills found the wreck of a helicopter hidden beneath vines and roots. Inside lay rusted metal, tattered fabric, and a single dog tag. The name was still clear through the corrosion. Larry Thorne. 34 years after he vanished, he was brought home. The coffin draped in the flag of the last army he ever served. Soldiers lined the path at Arlington, saluting a man who had fought under 3 banners but truly belonged to none. As the rifles fired their final salute, the sound rolled across the cemetery like distant thunder. For the first time in his life and his death, there was peace. Beneath one flag, in one soil, the soldier who fought both Hitler and Stalin finally rested. The wind moved through the trees, soft and cold, carrying whispers across the graves, somewhere far away. The snow still fell on Karelia, the forests still waited, and a legend became something more than myth. It became eternal.